It's July 4th, 1943. The time is 20 to 30 hours. We're in a forward observation post near the small village of Bitovo, located on the northern shoulder of the vast Kursk salient. The last sliver of the crimson sun has just vanished below the rolling steppe. But the darkness brings no relief, no peace. Instead, the tension hangs in the air, thick and heavy. You can smell the damp earth, the sweet scent of clover, and the faint, ever-present tang of diesel fuel that clings to everything. A young Soviet lieutenant, Pavel Grigoriev, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, rests his chin on the rough, sandbagged lip of the trench. His eyes are fixed, unblinking, staring west toward the German lines. For weeks, this has been the rhythm of life here, a nervous, unsettling quiet, punctuated only by the sporadic crump of distant artillery and the high-pitched whine of reconnaissance aircraft buzzing overhead. But tonight the silence feels different. It feels like a held breath, like the entire world is waiting for something terrible to happen. Beside him, a veteran sergeant, Ivan Morozov, known to his comrades as did Moroz or Grandfather Frost, methodically cleans his PPSH-41 submachine gun. His movements are economical, practiced, the result of years of combat. Without looking up from his task, he grumbles, his voice a low rumble. They're out there, Lieutenant, I can feel them in my bones. It's like a storm gathering, just over the horizon. He didn't need intelligence reports. The instinct of a seasoned soldier was all he needed. And then, it happens. Suddenly, the earth itself trembles. It's not from a single explosion. This is a deep, rolling thunder that seems to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through the very ground they stand on. To the west, the horizon erupts. 1,000 distant flashes, like a silent, violent summer heat lightning storm, flicker and dance, painting the sky in strobing bursts of light. A low, continuous roar begins to build, a sound that grows and grows until it swallows the night itself. This is it. The German artillery preparation for Operation Citadel has begun. The offensive the entire Red Army has been waiting for is finally here. Lieutenant Pavel's knuckles are bone white as he grips the coarse sandbags in front of him. The intelligence from Moscow Central was correct. The whispers, the rumors, the intercepted transmissions, they were all true. The Germans were launching their great summer offensive, aiming to pinch off the Kursk salient and trap over 1 million Soviet soldiers. Right now, the entire front, from the north near Ponyary all the way down to the south around Prokhorovka, is erupting in a cataclysm of fire and steel. This is the start of what will become the largest tank battle in human history. Pavel's mind races, picturing the immense, layered defenses that stretch for miles behind him. He thinks of the colossal anti-tank ditches, deep enough to swallow a panzer whole. He thinks of the vast, deadly minefields, sown with hundreds of thousands of TM-41 black plate mines, waiting silently in the dark. He thinks of the camouflage nests of PaK-43 anti-tank guns, their long barrels pointed west, ready to spit death at the approaching armor. And he thinks of the steel heart of the defense, the thousands of T-34 tanks of the 1st Tank Army, hidden in the forests and ravines. Engine silent, crews waiting for the order to counterattack. This was the grand strategy, the master plan conceived by Marshals Zhukov and Vasilevsky. Instead of launching their own preemptive strike, they had convinced Stalin to do the unthinkable, to absorb the German attack. Let the Wehrmacht come. Let them throw their elite panzer divisions, their brand new Tiger and Panther tanks, against the most formidable defensive network ever constructed. Let them break their teeth on the Soviet anvil. Let them exhaust themselves, bleed themselves dry. And then, only then, would the Soviet hammer fall. The shelling is terrifyingly methodical. It's a walking barrage, a moving wall of destruction designed to obliterate the first line of Soviet resistance, to tear the trenches, the bunkers, and the men inside them to pieces. The sound is more than just a noise. It's a physical force, a pressure wave that presses against Pavel's chest, making it hard to breathe. The air is filled with the shriek of incoming shells, and the deafening roar of their detonations. Dirt and shrapnel rain down from the sky. Through the chaos, Pavel sees the frantic beams of massive searchlights from the Soviet rear stabbing into the sky. They cut through the drifting smoke and dust, crisscrossing over the battlefield, creating an eerie, artificial dawn. The world is lit in a ghostly, strobing light, a scene from a nightmare. The German artillery is trying to blind the Soviet defenders, to pin them down, to create a path for their ground forces. Because they are coming, out there, in the darkness, beyond the curtain of fire and smoke, the greatest concentration of armored force the world has ever seen is lurching out of its assembly areas. Thousands of tanks and assault guns, their engines roaring to life, their tracks churning the Ukrainian soil, are moving forward. The iron fist of the Third Reich about to strike. For Lieutenant Pavel, Sergeant Morozov, and hundreds of thousands of their comrades, the long wait is over. The battle for Kursk has begun. And for the next 50 days, this small patch of the Eastern Front would become the epicenter of the Second World War. July 5, 1943. The time is 4:30 in the morning. We are on the Belgorod-Kursk axis, on the southern shoulder of the massive Kursk salient, inside the command cupola of a Panzer VI Tiger. Serial number 1331. The world is a metal box, vibrating with the raw, untamed power of its engine. Oberleutnant Hans von Bruck, a young officer in the elite Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler division, feels a familiar, gut-churning lurch as the 70-ton behemoth he commands crushes a wooden fence post and rolls inexorably forward. This is the beginning of Operation Citadel, the battle that will decide the fate of the Eastern Front. The dawn light is a sickly gray, filtered through the thick haze of smoke and dust kicked up by the world's largest artillery bombardment. Through his Zeiss binoculars, the Russian steppe stretching out before him is a nightmarish landscape. Geysers of dark earth and bright orange flames erupt continuously from the ground. The artillery has done its work, he thinks to himself. But has it been enough? Will the Soviet lines be broken, or just angered? All units, advance, swerving towards Prokhorovka. Keep interval. His voice, transmitted through the crackling headset, is a mask of calm, a professional veneer over the tension coiling in his stomach. Around his Tiger, the immense might of General Oberst Hermann Hoth's 4th Panzer Army awakens from its slumber. To his left, the sleek, deadly shapes of the new Panther tanks grind forward, their long 75mm guns pointing towards the horizon. To his right, the more numerous, but still formidable, Panzer Ives fan out, their short barrels ready. But the Tigers, they are the armored fist at the very center of the assault. They are the tip of the spear, with frontal armor 100mm thick. They are designed to be invulnerable to the standard Soviet anti-tank rifles and their lighter guns. They are the breakthrough weapon, the key to unlocking the Soviet defenses. For the first few kilometers, the advance is almost unnervingly quiet. The only sounds are the deafening roar of hundreds of Maybach engines and the constant, rhythmic screech of steel tracks biting into the dry earth. The Soviet first line of defense seems to have been completely pulverized by the pre-dawn bombardment. Craters and shattered trenches are all that remain. A sense of cautious optimism begins to spread through the tank crews. Perhaps this will be easier than they thought. Then, the steppe comes alive, from perfectly hidden, expertly camouflaged bunkers and spider holes that survive the shelling. Anti-tank rifles begin to crack. The sharp reports echo across the plains. Arcs of fire, Molotov cocktails, are thrown through the air, shattering harmlessly against the thick, angled armor of the Tiger. They leave behind nothing but a black, greasy stain. A hidden 45mm anti-tank gun fires from a concealed position. A sharp, metallic clang rings out as the shell impacts the front glacis plate of von Bruck's tank. The crew inside flinches instinctively from the loud impact, but the round simply ricochets off, screaming skyward with a shower of brilliant orange sparks. Von Bruck allows himself a tight, fleeting smile. These light weapons are gnats, annoying but harmless. Gunner, he says into the intercom, his voice steady. bunker at 200 meters. High explosive fire. The tank lurches slightly as the gunner traverses the turret. A moment later, the massive 88mm gun roars, and the offending bunker disappears in a cloud of dust and debris. But the resistance stiffens with every single meter gained. This is just the beginning. The Soviets have had months to prepare this battlefield, and they have turned it into a fortress. The German advance soon runs into vast minefields, sown with a diabolical density. A Panther to von Bruck's left hits one of these hidden traps. There's a brilliant flash, and its track explodes in a shower of broken steel links. The Great Ket lurches to a violent halt, crippled and exposed. Immediately, it becomes a magnet for every Soviet gun in the sector, drawing concentrated, furious fire. The air, already thick with smoke, fills with a new and terrifying sound, the high-pitched shriek of incoming artillery. These are the Katyusha rockets, the infamous Stalin's organs. Their terrifying, indiscriminate barrage turns an entire grid square into a hellscape of fire, shrapnel, and concussion. There's no hiding from them. They simply obliterate everything in their target area. The ground trembles, and the noise is an unbearable, soul-shaking crescendo. Suddenly, a new sound cuts through the cacophony of battle. It's a deep, throaty roar of diesel engines, a sound distinct from their own gasoline-powered panzers. From behind a reverse slope, a wave of Soviet T-34s emerges, charging forward at full speed. They are faster than the German tanks, more agile, and they use the terrain to their advantage, appearing as if from nowhere. At this range, their 76mm guns are at a disadvantage against the Tiger's thick hide, but their sheer numbers are overwhelming. For von Bruck, the world narrows to the view through his periscope. The wider battle, the strategic objectives, they all fade away. All that matters is survival. Gunner, he barks into the intercom, his voice sharp and urgent. T-34, 12 o'clock, 800 meters, armor piercing. The Tiger shudders violently with the recoil of its mighty 88. Even before the thunderous sound of the shot reaches their own ears, the distant T-34, instantly enveloped in a massive fireball. Its turret, weighing several tons, is ripped from the hull and spins grotesquely through the air before crashing back to earth. A direct hit, a kill. The German panzers are killing machines, honed for exactly this kind of fight. But they are drowning. They are drowning in a sea of Soviet steel and unbreakable resolve. For every T-34 they destroy, two more seem to materialize from the smoke to take its place. The waves are relentless, a tide of green tanks surging against them. The German steel tide is still advancing, but it is no longer a flood. It's no longer the blitzkrieg of 1941. It is a hard, brutal, bloody crawl, paid for in blood and steel for every yard of ground taken. The greatest tank battle in history has begun, and for the men inside these steel coffins, it is a desperate fight for survival. July 7, 1943, 900 hours. We are on the northern shoulder of the Kursk salient, near the railway junction at Ponyeri. Or what's left of it. The village is gone, erased from the earth. In its place, a nightmare landscape of shattered brick, splintered wood, and railway tracks twisted into grotesque sculptures of steel. This is the northern pincer of the German offensive, where General Field Marshal Walter Model's 9th Army engaged in a battle of pure annihilation. The grand strategies of sweeping armored maneuvers have died here. This is a war of meters, of shell holes, of brutal, intimate combat for every single strong point. On the maps, they are just cold designations. Hill 253.5 or the Mayakovsky Collective Farm. On the ground, they are meat grinders. Unterhof Isier Ernst Kessler, his face a mask of grime and exhaustion, presses himself into a crater that was once a family's cellar. The air is thick with the stench of cordite, rot, and the sickeningly sweet, coppery smell of death. An MG-40 machine gun, its barrel already changed 5 times this morning, lies cooling on the lip of the crater. His squad, once a full-strength unit, is now down to just 4 men. Across a mere 50 meters of churned earth, a Soviet machine gun nest, dug into the ruins of a concrete grain silo, has them pinned down completely. Every time the accompanying pioneer engineers try to advance with their flamethrowers, they are cut down by a hail of sniper fire and perfectly aimed mortar rounds. The Soviet defense here, masterminded by General Rokossovsky's Central Front, is a fortress built on sheer tenacity. The entire area has been transformed into a labyrinth of death. Trenches are interconnected by deep, reinforced bunkers. Every ruin has become a fortified strong point, and every field of rubble the pre-sighted killing zone for hidden anti-tank guns and T-34s dug in up to their turrets. The Germans have brought their titans to the fight, the Ferdinand and tank destroyers. These massive, 65-ton behemoths carry a devastating 88mm gun, lethal at long range. But up close, they are tragically flawed. Without machine guns for self-defense, they are horrifically vulnerable. Soviet infantry, armed with magnetic hollow charge mines and bundles of grenades, swarm them like angry ants whenever one strays too close to the infantry lines, climbing onto their hulls to deliver a fatal blow. A whistle cuts through the cacophony of battle, a thin, desperate sound. It's the signal for another attack. A wave of German panzer grenadiers rises from their cover, gray figures moving in short, frantic dashes across the open ground. Kessler heaves the MG-42 into position, its weight a familiar, loathsome burden. He unleashes a covering burst, the weapon's distinct ripping cloth sound tearing the air apart. He sees one of his men stumble and fall, then another vanish from sight. The advance falters. From the Soviet line, a new sound joins the symphony of destruction. It's a rapid, low thump-thump-thump. A regiment of Su-15 to self-propelled guns has entered the fray. Their crews call them Zveroboy, the animal hunter. Their massive 152mm shells aren't designed for precision. They are designed for one thing: obliteration. One of these enormous shells lands right in the middle of a cluster of advancing German infantry. There is no heroic last stand, no dramatic final charge. There is only a red mist that hangs in the air for a moment, and then a new, gaping crater in the earth. Kessler sinks back into his hole, his ears ringing, the world a dull roar. The objective, a simple railway embankment just 300 meters ahead, now seems as distant and unattainable as the moon. The German advance in the north has not just stalled, it is being systematically bled white. The initiative, that precious, intangible force that decides the fate of battles, is seeping away, soaking into the bloody soil of Ponieri. This wasn't the war of Blitzkrieg the veterans of 1941 remembered. This was something new, something far more terrible. Ponieri became known as the Stalingrad of Kursk for a reason. For days, control of key points like the railway station, the schoolhouse, and the water tower swapped hands multiple times a day. German units would capture a position in the morning, only to be thrown out by a ferocious Soviet counterattack in the afternoon, and then have to retake the same rubble-strewn ground that evening. The cost was astronomical. Entire companies were wiped out in hours. The fighting was so close that soldiers used bayonets, trench knives, and sharpened spades. It was a primitive, medieval form of combat waged with 20th century firepower. The psychological toll was immense. For soldiers like Kessler, the constant artillery bombardment, the ever-present threat of snipers, and the sheer visual horror of the battlefield created an environment of unrelenting stress. Sleep was a luxury, snatched in minutes in a muddy trench, always with one ear open for the telltale whistle of an incoming shell. The distinction between day and night blurred into a continuous cycle of terror and exhaustion. This was attritional warfare at its most brutal, a grim contest of who could absorb the most punishment and still have men left to send over the top. Model, known for his stubborn determination, kept pushing, feeding more and more divisions into the grinder. But Rokossovsky's defense was like a steel wall. It bent, it buckled, but it refused to break. Every meter of ground gained by the Germans was paid for with a river of blood, a price that was rapidly becoming unsustainable. The grand offensive, Operation Citadel, was slowly but surely being ground to a halt right here, in the dirt and ruins of an obscure railway town. The fate of the entire Eastern Front was being decided, not by sweeping tank battles, but by the courage and endurance of the individual soldier in his foxhole. July 12, 1943, 8 in the morning. We're in the rolling fields southwest of Prokhorovka station. Visibility is poor, less than a kilometer. The morning haze is thick, mixed with smoke from burning wheat fields and dust kicked up by thousands of tank tracks. This isn't just a battlefield, it's a powder keg waiting for a spark. Inside the Command T-34 of the 5th Guards Tank Army, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Gorbachev wipes sweat from his eyes. His radio headset crackles to life. It's his commander, General Pavel Rotmistrov. The order in a complex tactical maneuver. It's primal, a raw cry for battle, Vyataku, smrt fasciskim zakvachikum. Translated, it means, into the attack, death to the fascist invaders. Gorbachev relays the command, and his T-34, along with hundreds of others, surges over the crest of a low hill. What he sees next is something that would be seared into the memory of every soldier present. It steals his breath. The entire valley before him is not earth and grass, but a moving, metallic plain. It's the spearhead of the elite 2 SS Panzer Corps, hundreds of German tanks, including the new and feared Tigers and Panthers, are advancing in a disciplined, staggered formation. This is it, the moment of truth. The clash that will decide not just the Battle of Kursk, but perhaps the entire war on the Eastern Front. There's no room for clever flanking maneuvers or subtle tactics. The Soviet plan is brutal, born from a mix of desperation and cold, hard calculation. The objective is simple: close the distance. Get in close, inside the effective range of the Tiger's legendary 88mm gun. Get so close that the T-34's superior mobility and smaller size can be used to its full advantage, negating the Tiger's thick frontal armor. Maximum speed, headlong charge, aim for the flanks, the tracks. Gorbachev screams into the tank's intercom, his voice barely audible over the roaring engine. His crew responds instantly. The T-34 lurches forward, accelerating into the valley of death. Around him, a wave of Soviet armor follows suit, a red tide crashing against a steel breakwater. What unfolds next in a battle in the traditional sense? There are no neat lines, no organized formations. It's a chaotic, close-range melee, a monstrous brawl of steel behemoths. Imagine a medieval tournament, but with 60-ton war machines instead of knights on horseback. The scale is almost unimaginable. A Soviet T-34, its diesel engine screaming at maximum dilutions, slams full speed into the side of a massive Tiger tank. The impact is colossal, a deafening shriek of tortured metal. The force of the collision jams the Tiger's turret ring, rendering its powerful main gun useless. The German gunner tries to traverse the turret, but it won't budge. The Tiger's gun barrel swings wildly, unable to depress low enough to hit the Soviet tank now hugging its side. The T-34's gunner, seizing the opportunity, fires round after round into the vulnerable junction between the Tiger's hull and turret. Finally, with a catastrophic internal explosion, the German tank's hatches blow clean off, vomiting a column of fire and black smoke into the sky. The air becomes a thick, unbreathable soup of smoke, dust, and the sickeningly sweet smell of burning oil, cordite, and human flesh. Visibility drops to near zero. Tanks are firing at muzzle flashes in the gloom, at fleeting shapes that appear and disappear in the swirling chaos. It's instinctual, brutal combat. A German Panther, one of the newest and most advanced tanks on the field, is suddenly rocked by an explosion. It's been hit in its vulnerable side armor. The shot came from a camouflage Su-85 tank destroyer, which had been lying in ambush in a nearby stand of sunflowers, patiently waiting for the perfect shot. But the Germans are exacting a terrible price. A single Tiger, positioned perfectly on a slight rise, spots a platoon of T-34s charging towards it. from a range of 1,500 meters, well outside the effective range of the T-34's guns. The Tiger opens fire. Its shells pierce the Soviet tank's armor like paper. One after another, the T-34s erupt in flames, annihilated before they can even get close enough to fight back. Gorbachev's own tank shudders violently from a massive impact. They've been hit on the front glacis plate. The noise is deafening, a clang that resonates through the entire hull. But miraculously, the shell ricochets, skittering off into the sky. They are lucky, and they are still in the fight. Gunner, traverse left. Target, Panzer IV, at 50 meters, Gorbachev shouts. His gunner acquires the target, and their own 76mm gun barks. The shot is true, striking the German tank's turret and sending it spinning. In this inferno, the very concept of a front line dissolves. It's every tank for itself. Duels erupt amidst the burning wrecks of other tanks. When a tank is knocked out, the fight doesn't necessarily end. Surviving crew members, dazed and wounded, spill out from their metal tombs, continuing the fight with pistols and submachine guns, turning the battlefield into a surreal landscape of individual duels amidst the carnage. By midday, the fighting begins to subside. The fields of Prokhorovka, once covered in wheat, are now a smoldering, metallic graveyard. Hundreds of tanks, both German and Soviet, lie destroyed, their blackened hulls littering the landscape like ancient monuments to a forgotten war. The Soviets have suffered catastrophic losses, a truly staggering number of men and machines lost in just a few hours. But the German spearhead, the elite SS Panzer divisions, have been stopped. Their offensive power has been shattered against the unyielding, self-sacrificing charge of the Red Army. They have been blunted, their momentum broken. The Germans have not broken through. The Battle of Prokhorovka was one of the largest and most brutal tank battles in history, a turning point that bled the German panzer forces white and ensured that the strategic initiative on the Eastern Front would remain firmly in Soviet hands until the very end of the war. The cost was immense, but on that fiery day in July 1943, the tide of war was irrevocably turned. Thanks for watching. If you found this story of courage and sacrifice compelling, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history's most pivotal moments. July 13, 1943, 1600 hours. We are inside a forward command post of the 2nd Panzer Division in the Urel sector on the northern flank of the Kursk salient. The air is thick with tension, cut only by the flickering light of a single lantern. This light dances across the map table and glints off the sweat beating on the forehead of General Heinrich Eberbach. The rhythmic crackle of confident reports over the radio has vanished. In its place is a chaotic mess of static, frantic requests for support, and broken reports of disaster. A staff officer approaches the map, his movements deliberate, his face grim. He places a new marker on the board, but this one is different. It's not a familiar German symbol. It's a red arrow, pointing deep behind their own lines, far to the north. Labeled next to it are 3 chilling words: 11th Guards Army. The officer's voice is hollow, devoid of emotion, as he states the unthinkable. The Soviets have counterattacked at Urel. They've broken through the 2nd Panzer's screening forces. They're exploiting south, toward Kharkiv. They threaten our entire rear. Eberbach closes his eyes, just for a second, absorbing the impact of the news. This is it. This is the hammer blow they all secretly feared. While the Wehrmacht was bleeding itself white, throwing its last strategic reserves into the meat grinder of Operation Citadel, the Soviets were playing a different game. They hadn't just been defending, they had been preparing. This was Operation Kutuzov, a massive, meticulously planned counteroffensive unleashed with brutal force. The strategic genius of Soviet marshals Zhukov and Vasilevsky was now on full display. They had not only built a defensive network so deep and so lethal that it had swallowed the German panzer divisions whole, but they had also kept entire fresh armies in reserve. The steppe front, under the command of Ivan Konev, was a phantom army held back for this exact moment, the moment the German attack faltered. The German offensive wasn't just stalled anymore. It was now staring down the barrel of complete encirclement. Outside the command post, the very sound of the war has changed. The singular roar of battle from the east has been joined by a new, rising crescendo from the north. And more ominously, a distant rumble is now growing from the south as well. The Soviet artillery, which had never truly fallen silent, now takes on a new, terrifying intensity. It's a rolling barrage, a steel storm walking methodically closer to their positions. Everyone knows what this means. It's the prelude to a massive infantry assault. Let's shift our perspective to the battlefield itself, to Oberleutnant von Bruck and his Tiger tank. They are part of a desperate rearguard action, tasked with holding the line, but the line has dissolved. The threat is no longer in front of them, it's everywhere. The sky suddenly darkens as Soviet Il-76 ground attack aircraft, nicknamed the Flying Tanks, scream out of the sun. Their 23mm cannons rip across the landscape, stitching lines of fire and explosions across the steppe. A nearby ammunition truck is hit, and it erupts in a blinding fireball, consuming a half-track parked next to it. The concussion wave rocks von Bruck's Tiger, a stark reminder of their vulnerability. When the order to retreat finally comes through the crackling radio, it's not for a disciplined, orderly withdrawal. It's a desperate, fighting crawl under overwhelming pressure from all sides. The retreat is a chaotic scramble for survival. Tanks that have run out of precious fuel are abandoned, their crews setting demolition charges to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. The wounded are piled onto any vehicle that can still move: trucks, personnel carriers, even the backs of tanks. That sacred principle of warfare the Germans had gambled everything to reclaim at Kursk. The initiative is now gone. It hasn't just been lost, it has been seized by the Red Army with a ferocity and on a scale that leaves the German high command utterly staggered. The Germans are no longer the conductors of this symphony of destruction. They are now just reacting, desperately trying to plug holes in a dam that is bursting everywhere at once. They are dancing to a tune orchestrated by their enemy. The Battle of Kursk, the greatest tank battle in human history, is over. What begins now is something else entirely. It is not a battle. It is a long, brutal retreat. A retreat under the relentless, crushing pressure of a Soviet war machine that has just shifted into its highest gear. A gear from which it would not downshift until it reached the streets of Berlin. The tide of war on the Eastern Front has turned, decisively and irrevocably. August 5, 1943, 11 o'clock hours. The outskirts of Belgorod, on the southern shoulder of what was once the Kursk salient. For the German forces, this is no orderly withdrawal. The retreat is a brutal, continuous extraction under relentless fire. What remains of the once mighty Grossdeutschland division is now just a shadow of its former self. Its proud panzer formations have been reduced to a ragged collection of whatever tanks can still move and fight. They are executing a desperate delaying action, falling back through fields of sunflowers that are no longer golden, but blackened, broken, and trampled. Oberleutnant von Bruck commands Tiger 1331, one of the few heavy tanks still operational. The tank's exterior tells the story of the past month's fighting. It's a canvas of scars, carbon-scoring streaks its gray paint. Dents and pockmarks from near misses pepper the thick armor. A fresh, bright gash of raw metal marks where a shell glanced off its side skirt. Inside the steel beast, the atmosphere is just as grim. The intercom crackles not with commands, but with the labored, ragged breathing of the crew. These men are running on fumes, operating on a brittle edge of pure exhaustion and adrenaline. They are part of a moving pocket of resistance, a small island of defiance in a sea of red, trying to fall back toward the next defensible river line. But the Soviets give no quarter, no respite. The red tide is relentless. T-34s, appearing in seemingly endless waves, harry their flanks, probing for any sign of weakness. A new, terrifying tactic has become common. Soviet infantry cling to the hulls of their tanks, riding them directly into the fray. As the T-34s close the distance, these tank riders leap off, swarming the German grenadiers with their PPSH-41 submachine guns. Their tactics are fluid, aggressive, and overwhelming. The Germans, accustomed to a different kind of war, struggle to adapt to this ferocious, close-quarters combat. The air, once a domain contested by the Luftwaffe, now belongs entirely to the Red Air Force. A flight of Yak-9 fighters screams overhead, their machine guns and cannons spitting fire. The German column scatters as the fighters strafe them, forcing soldiers to dive for cover into ditches and shell craters. The sky offers no safety, only another dimension of threat. It is during this chaotic retreat that von Bruck witnesses a sight that crystallizes the entire disaster for him. On a slight rise, silhouetted against the smoke-filled sky, sits a Ferdinand and tank destroyer. This behemoth, one of the most powerful anti-tank weapons ever built, is immobile. A broken final drive has rendered it a useless 70-ton steel coffin. It was abandoned. Its crew, tragically lacking a simple machine gun for self-defense, had been picked off by Soviet infantry days before. Now, the Ferdinand is a monument to German technological over-engineering and a profound strategic miscalculation. It is a powerful, fearsome weapon rendered a lifeless hulk in a war that was no longer about individual duels, but about movement, numbers, and attrition, a war the Germans were now losing. Meanwhile, back on the ground that was the heart of the battle just days ago, near Butovo, Lieutenant Pavel Grigoriev walks across a landscape that is no longer recognizable. This was his observation post. Now, the earth is a churned, metallic graveyard. The carefully dug trenches are gone, filled in by the dirt thrown up from thousands of shell craters. He steps over the blackened, twisted hull of a Panzer IV. Its interior is completely burned out, leaving a ghostly, skeletal wreck. The air is thick with a smell he will never forget, the pervasive, cloying stench of death and decay. It's a physical weight pressing down on him. But amidst the horror, there's a sign of change. The guns are quieter now, rumbling only in the distance, their thunder moving steadily west. Nearby, Sergeant Morozov squats beside a disabled Tiger tank, the pride of the German Panzer Waffe. Its massive 88mm gun, a weapon that had terrorized Soviet tankers, now droops toward the earth, defeated. Morozov taps its thick frontal armor with a knuckle, a simple, knowing gesture. He looks up at Grigoriev. "See, Lieutenant." Even the tigers break. He says it not with triumph or bravado, but with a grim, weary finality. It's the voice of a man who has seen too much, fought too hard, and survived against all odds. His words capture the essence of their victory. It wasn't about superior technology. It was about resilience, numbers, and an unbreakable will. The fields around them are littered with a harvest of steel. This is what the battle has reaped. Hundreds of tanks, both German and Soviet, are strewn across the landscape. Many are locked together in a final, silent embrace, destroyed in the very act of trying to destroy each other. This is the aftermath of the largest tank battle in human history. But the Soviet war machine does not pause to mourn or to celebrate. It is a practical, relentless force. Recovery teams are already at work, their tractors and prime movers swarming the battlefield. They ignore the German wrecks for now, focusing on their own. Salvageable T-34s are carefully hooked up and towed away to rear area depots. There, they will be repaired, recruited, and sent back to the front. The Soviet Union consumes the wreckage of battle, recycles its losses, and prepares to move forward. Every saved tank is another weapon for the next push west. Hundreds of miles away, in the quiet, sterile offices of Berlin, the reality of the situation is sinking in. The daily reports from the Eastern Front make for bleak, horrifying reading. The failure is undeniable. Operation Citadel, the last great German strategic offensive in the East, has not just failed, it has failed catastrophically. The armored reserves of the Wehrmacht, the very core of its striking power, have been gutted on the fields of Kursk, the elite panzer divisions have been bled white. From this point forward, the German army on the Eastern Front will be in a state of perpetual retreat. The strategic initiative, which they had held since 1941, is forever lost. They will no longer fight for victory, for conquest, or for grand strategic objectives. They will now fight for something far more desperate: survival. They will fight to delay the inevitable, to hold a collapsing front, to simply exist for one more day. The tide has turned, decisively and irreversibly, back on the steppe. Under the vast, indifferent sky, the wind begins to blow. It stirs the dust and scatters the fine black ash that covers everything. It whispers through the shattered sunflowers and whistles through the skeletal remains of tanks. The wind carries away the echoes of the guns, the shouts of men, and the stench of death. The Battle of Kursk is over. A new, final chapter of the war on the Eastern Front has begun. Thank you for watching. If you found this glimpse into history compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories from the past. We'll see you on the next one.